You've seen a red string on someone's wrist, maybe on a friend's wrist, maybe on a coworker's, maybe on a celebrity in an interview. Maybe someone tied it on you when you were a kid, your grandmother, your mom, someone who told you it was protection, and you wore it without asking questions. Or maybe you saw it in a store, a small red spool for pocket change with a label that said Kabbalah, or protection from the evil eye. And you thought, okay, it's some religious thing, some Eastern thing. But here's the question nobody asks. Why red? Not why a string, not why the wrist. Why this particular color was chosen by four completely different traditions on four completely different ends of the world with zero contact between them. Kabbalah, Hinduism, Buddhism, Slavic paganism. Four systems, four languages, four different gods, four different explanations, and the exact same answer, a red string on the wrist as protection. This isn't a coincidence. There's something beneath it, more fundamental than any religious tradition. It's biology. Let's start at the very beginning, at the moment of birth. A newborn sees the world in a very limited range. Their vision is blurry. Colors are mostly indistinguishable, almost all of them. The brain hasn't learned to process visual information fully yet, but one color a newborn sees before all the others: red. This isn't random, it's biology. Red has the longest wavelength in the visible spectrum, around 700 nanometers. That's why it pierces through the imperfect optics of a newborn's eye sooner than any other color. Red is the very first color a human sees, literally the first visual experience in life. And red stays special for the rest of your life. Neuroscientists have shown that red activates the sympathetic nervous system more strongly than any other color. It speeds up your heart rate, raises your blood pressure, sharpens your focus. It literally forces your body to react. This is why traffic lights are red, why stop signs are red, why warnings are red. Not because someone decided red looks dangerous, but because red is physically impossible to ignore. The brain reacts to it faster than to any other color. It's hardwired into us at the neurobiological level. But red is also the color of blood and the color of fire, two of the most fundamental visual experiences for ancient humans. Blood means both life and death. Fire means both warmth and destruction. Both are red. Both are impossible to ignore. Both demand an immediate response. Millions of years of evolution made humans hypersensitive to the color red. And when an ancient person looked for material to make a protective amulet, something that would be seen, that would be noticed, that would signal, choosing red wasn't a religious decision. It was a biological instinct. Red stops the gaze. Red grabs attention. Red says, "Look here, pay attention." And this is where we arrive at the key link to the topic of the evil eye. We already talked about this in the previous video. The evil eye is the fear of someone else's gaze charged with envy or desire, a gaze that lingers on you too long, a gaze that carries dark energy. How do you protect yourself from such a gaze? You intercept it. You give it a point of attraction that stops it before it reaches you. You create an object that the gaze will see first and fixate on, instead of fixating on you. The red string on your wrist is exactly that. It's a decoy for the eye. That impossible to ignore red hijacks your attention, and the evil eye stops on the string, instead of moving on to whatever you hold dear. This isn't magic. It's neuroscience applied to social protection, and four completely different civilizations with no knowledge of each other arrived at the same conclusion, because all four had the same brain. The same neuroscience, the same instinct. Red hijacks the eye. Red protects. That's the answer to why it's red specifically. Not because it says so in sacred texts, because that's how the human brain is wired. But each tradition gave this biological instinct its own explanation, its own story, its own ritual. And those stories, they're very different. And each one adds something to the big picture. Let's start with Kabbalah, with Jerusalem, with one specific tomb that's been standing on the outskirts of the city for 3,000 years. If you like what we're doing here, subscribe right now, because from here, the story gets specific and very personal. The story of a woman who died thousands of years ago, and whose red string is still sold by the millions around the world. Jerusalem, the edge of the city. A small white building with a blue dome. This is Rachel's tomb. one of the most revered sites in Judaism. Rachel is the matriarch of the Jewish people, Jacob's wife, the mother of Joseph and Benjamin, a woman who died in childbirth on the road to Bethlehem and was buried right where she fell, not in the family tomb, right on the road. According to Jewish tradition, Rachel was buried here specifically so she could greet her children as they passed by into exile, and comfort them, and pray for their return. She's a mother who never stops protecting her children, even after death, even after thousands of years. And the red string that's wrapped around her tomb 7 times, it absorbs that protection. It becomes a carrier of that motherly power. That's where the Kabbalistic tradition of the red string comes from, not from abstract magic, from the specific story of a specific woman. The string you wear on your wrist, it's a string that touched the mother's tomb. That carries her protection within it. Pilgrims come to Rachel's tomb from all over the world. They bring red strings, wrap them around the tomb, pray. Then the string is cut into small pieces and handed out. Each piece carries the blessing of that place. That's exactly why the Kabbalistic red string should be tied on the left wrist. In Kabbalistic tradition, the left side is the side of receiving. The right side is the side of giving. You're receiving protection, so left wrist. And someone else has to tie it on you, not you yourself. Because protection is an act of love from one person to another. You can't protect yourself the same way someone who loves you can. That's a beautiful logic, and very human. Madonna, Britney Spears, Aishwarya Rai, dozens of celebrities wore the Kabbalistic red string in the early 2000s. That turned it into a global pop culture phenomenon. But the roots, they're here, in the white building with the blue dome on the edge of Jerusalem, in the story of a woman who died on the road protecting her children. Now, India, a completely different tradition, a different language, different gods, different holy texts, and the same red string. In Hinduism, it's called mauli, or kalava. It's a red and yellow thread that a priest ties around the wrist during religious ceremonies. It's mentioned in the Vedas, some of the oldest sacred texts in human history, over 3,000 years old. The logic behind mauli is a little different from the Kabbalistic thread, but the end result is the same. In Hindu tradition, the human body has several points where energy enters and exits. The wrist is one of those points. A thread tied around the wrist creates a barrier. It stops negative energy from entering through that point, and it keeps protective energy from leaking out. It's like a valve. The thread regulates the flow. Also, mauli is tied on the right wrist for men and the left wrist for women. Why? Because in Hindu tradition, the right side is the active, masculine, solar side. The left is the passive, feminine, lunar side. The thread has to match the nature of the person wearing it. And mauli is always red or red and yellow. Red is the color of the goddess Durga, the color of strength and protection. Yellow is the color of knowledge and sacred fire. Together, they create full protection. 3,000 years of tradition, and it's still alive today. If you've ever been to India, you see mauli on people's wrists everywhere, on programmers in Bangalore, and on farmers in villages, on kids and on the elderly, on people riding the subway, staring at their phones. A tradition 3,000 years old, and it never died. Now, Tibet. Buddhism, another tradition, and again, no contact with the first two when this practice was forming. In Tibetan Buddhism, there's a tradition of blessed threads, most often red or orange, that lamas tie around the wrists of their followers. It's called sumdu, a protective thread. The logic of the Tibetan thread is closer to Kabbalah than to Hinduism. It's not an energy barrier, it's a carrier of blessing. The lama prays over the thread, chants mantras, pours the intention of protection into it, then ties it on the wrist, passing that intention on physically. The thread becomes a physical embodiment of the prayer. The Dalai Lama ties red threads on thousands of people during his public audiences. It's one of the most famous Buddhist rituals, seen by millions worldwide. And again, red, no coincidence. In Tibetan tradition, red is linked to compassion and protection. To an energy that's active and effective. An energy that doesn't just wish well, it does something concrete to make it happen. 3 traditions, 3 explanations, 1 thread, 1 color. And now, the 4th, the one that surprises a lot of viewers, because it's not an exotic Eastern tradition. It's a tradition that was right here in Russia, Ukraine, Belarus, the Balkans, Slavic paganism. Long before Christianity, centuries before Kabbalah became known in those lands, centuries before Buddhist lamas ever set foot in Europe, the Slavs were already using the red thread. It had different names in different regions: Krasnaya nitka, Oberezhnaya nit obereg, but the meaning was the same. A red thread was tied around a baby's wrist right after birth to protect from the evil eye. So evil spirits couldn't cause harm, so luck would stick around. The mother tied it, or the grandmother, or the midwife, the one who welcomed the child into the world. And it had to stay on the wrist until it naturally broke. Taking it off on purpose was a bad sign. You'd be breaking the protection. When the thread finally broke, that was a sign too. It had absorbed something bad. It did its job. It protected. Slavic logic of the red thread is the most straightforward of all four traditions. The color red scares away evil spirits. Evil can see red, and so it turns away. This isn't a metaphor. In the Slavic pagan worldview, evil spirits were literally afraid of the color red. That's why red appears constantly in Russian folk tales and rituals. The red corner in a house, a red shirt for holidays, red ribbons in braids, red threads on livestock to ward off the evil eye, red as total protection against everything dark. Four traditions: Kabbalah, Hinduism, Buddhism, Slavic paganism. None of them knew the others existed when they formed this practice, and all four arrived at the same thing: a red thread on the wrist protects. Why? We already know the answer. Because red stops the gaze. Because the gaze carries power, and intercepting it means protecting yourself. But there's another layer, one we'll talk about in the final part. Because the red thread isn't just about the gaze. It's about connection, about the fact that protection is always an act of connection between people, and that's where its real power lies. More on that next. Four traditions. Four explanations. One thread. But there's something that unites all four, a detail you'd easily miss if you looked at each tradition separately. And this detail is the most important thing I want to tell you in this video. In all four traditions, the red thread is not tied by the wearer themselves, it's tied by someone else. In Kabbalah, by someone who loves you, a mother, a sister, a friend, someone who wishes you protection and ties the thread with that intention. In Hinduism, by a priest, a person who has dedicated their life to service, whose intention is pure. In Buddhism, by a lama, a person who has reached a certain level of spiritual development and whose prayer carries power. In the Slavic tradition, by a mother or a midwife, the person who welcomed you into this world and bears responsibility for your life. In every case, another person, not you. Why does this matter? Because it tells us something fundamental about the nature of protection, about what protection actually is. Protection is not something you can give yourself. Protection is something one person gives to another. It's an act of love, an act of care, an act of intentional goodwill. When a mother ties a red thread around her child's wrist, she's not just performing a ritual. She's saying, "I see you. I'm thinking of you. I want things to go well for you, and I'm doing something concrete to make that happen." The thread is the physical embodiment of that intention. You wear it on your wrist, and you carry with it someone's care, someone's love, someone's desire to protect you. This isn't magic, it's psychology. Research in psychology shows that people who feel protected, truly protected by those who care for them, handle stress better. Their immune systems work more effectively. They make better decisions. They're more resilient to external threats. The feeling of being protected isn't an illusion. It's a physiological state that changes how your body works. The red thread on your wrist creates that feeling. Every time you look at it, somewhere at the edge of your consciousness, you remember the person who tied it. That someone was thinking of you, that you're not alone. It doesn't scare away the evil eye. It scares away loneliness. That's the real power of the red thread. Now, why the wrist specifically? Because that's no coincidence either. Your wrist is where your pulse comes closest to the surface of your skin, where you can feel your heartbeat just by touching it with your finger. In most ancient traditions, the pulse is life. It's what separates the living from the dead. It's the voice of the heart you can hear through your skin. Tying a protective thread around your wrist means protecting life itself, not your hand, not your body, the life that's pulsing right beneath that thread. The Egyptians believed that from the ring finger of your left hand runs a direct vessel to the heart, the vena amoris, the vein of love. That's why wedding rings go on that finger, and your left wrist is the closest point to that vein, to the heart, to life. A red thread on your left wrist protects the heart, protects your life force, protects whatever pulses. Now let's talk about today, because the red thread has become a global phenomenon that stretches far beyond any religious tradition. People wear it who know nothing about Kabbalah, people who've never set foot in a Hindu temple, people who have zero connection to Tibetan Buddhism and have never heard of Slavic talismans. They just saw this thread on someone's wrist, felt something, and wanted one for themselves. Why? Because the red thread speaks a language you understand without words, without any religious background, without cultural context. It says, "Someone was thinking about me. Someone wanted to protect me. I'm not alone." That's a message your brain picks up instantly, on an instinct level, no translation needed. That's why 4 completely different civilizations ended up with the same answer, not because they all read the same scriptures, but because all 4 had the same brain, the same instinct, the same need to feel protected, to feel like someone's got your back. Red, a color you can't ignore, a thread tied by someone else, a wrist where life pulses. 3 elements, 4 traditions, 1 instinct. And now here's the final question I want to ask you. Do you have a red thread? Not in a religious way, not Kabbalah or Hinduism. In the most basic sense, is there something on your wrist that someone tied for you? Something that reminds you someone was thinking about you, someone wanted you to be okay? If you do, now you get why it works. Not because the thread is magical, but because it carries someone's love. And love is the oldest form of protection humanity has ever known. If you don't, maybe it's time. Not because you believe in the evil eye, but because sometimes we need a physical reminder that we're not alone, that someone's thinking of us, that we're safe. The red thread is 4,000 years of that reminder, all wrapped up in a piece of string that costs pocket change. If this video changed how you see the things around you, hit like. That tells me to keep going. Because there are so many things like this around you, and behind every single one, there's a story. Long, strange, and in the end, always about you. Next video, the dream catcher. You've seen it 1,000 times. It hangs above your bed. It's supposed to catch bad dreams and let good ones through. But the original dream catcher wasn't catching dreams. It was catching evil spirits that came to a sleeping child. And the web in the center isn't decorative. It's a trap, literally. And the story of how the Ojibwe people created it, it's one of the most beautiful and darkest stories about protecting children I've ever heard. See you.